With Augustus's climb down from power, despite gaining the foundations for his powers being personal to him, rather than an office of the Republic, he desperately needed to regain his absolute power within the state and prevent it from dissipating. The idea, perhaps, was to let the Senate run things for a bit, and then after a short break come back as a kind of saviour, having shown the Senate to be utterly incapable of running things themselves. In 22 BC, there was disaster in Rome. The city flooded, there were severe thunderstorms, there was plague in all Italy, likely continuing from 23 BC, and famine in Rome. The people blamed all of these disasters on the fact that Augustus was no longer consul. That role was being filled by Marcus Marcellus and Lucius Arruntius. The people quickly took action. They marched on the Senate, locked them in the Senate House, and threatened to burn it down with the Senate inside if they did not grant Augustus the dictatorship. The Senate agreed. The people took the 24 fasces to Augustus and implored him to become dictator and commissioner for the grain supply. As for the dictatorship, he utterly and dramatically refused, tearing off his clothes on the rostra in the forum and baring his breast, inviting people to kill him rather than accept the dictatorship. As for the cura annona, Augustus set up a permanent office of 2 ex-praetors, which he appointed for the supervision of the distribution of grain. Augustus enshrined this event in his Res Gestae, Augustus Res Gestae, Part 5, 1-3. The dictatorship offered to me, both in my absence and when I was present by both the people and the Senate, I did not accept. During the great shortage of wheat, I did not refuse charge of the grain supply, which I so administered that within a few days I freed the whole city from apprehension and immediate danger at my own costs and by my own efforts. The annual and perpetual consulship offered to me at that same time I did not accept. Although he does not explain why he was offered these offices, it does confirm the events recorded by Cassius Dio and Suetonius. This populist act was hardly meant to quell the crisis, but actually endear himself to the people and make the Senate look totally foolish. This may have been designed to show to the Senate that Augustus could just seize power through the people and dispense with the Senate. There is evidence that Augustus may have engineered the grain shortage, which helped cause this whole affair. Considering that the whole food shortage was resolved in a few days, the food cannot have been too far from Rome, possibly hiding in Ostia. He also relieved them from apprehension. This means that they were not out of food yet, but the supply was running low, implying that this was a supply problem rather than an actual issue. The fact that Tiberius, Augustus's son-in-law, was quaestor and put in charge of the grain supply in 23 to 22 BC means that if there was a shortage, it was Tiberius's fault. Interestingly, had this issue arisen in the Republic, it would have been the tribunes of the plebs that championed the people's issues. But in 22 BC, where were the 10 tribunes? They did nothing, and in fact had done nothing for well over a decade. Augustus, with his newfound power of the tribune, was in a sense fulfilling their role. Whether this was a real crisis due to the Senate's failure or fake crisis of Augustus's making, it strengthened Augustus's hand considerably. After Augustus dealt with the crisis in Rome, he then left to go to the provinces, first to Sicily, close to Rome, and then the east, and did not come back until 19 BC. However, while in Sicily, more problems occurred in Rome. In July of 22 BC, there was a significant disturbance in Rome regarding the consular election, breaking out into riots. Marcus Lollius was elected consul, and the other consulship was reserved for Augustus. Augustus refused the office and told them to elect the second consul again, Quintus Lepidus and Lucius Silvanus contested the other consulship, and their rivalry descended into total turmoil. Augustus was asked to intercede and come to Rome. Augustus refused. The two candidates personally went to visit Augustus, but he just let the election occur while the candidates were away. Eventually, Lepidus was elected consul. In 21 BC, Augustus, on Maecenas' advice, then sent Agrippa to supervise Rome, and while he was there, married Julia, thus making Agrippa Augustus' son-in-law. Even so, riots continued and prevented the election of the prefect of the city for the Ferrare festival. Augustus then headed off to the east. In 20 BC, Agrippa went to Gaul and then Spain, which meant that there was no strong allies of Augustus in Rome.